The mind sees and the mind hears. The rest is blind and deaf, said Epicharmus 450 years before the birth of Christ.
Welcome to The Structure. Now today we're going to be asking the question, is that the truth? Are we blind like Epicharmus claimed? Or today's show is going to be about optical illusion and whether the world around us is real or just perceived as real by our brains.
Optical illusions are usually perceived images which are deceptive or misleading. The information is gathered by the eye, processed by the brain, and presents a picture that doesn't match with the original image.
Now let's look at some classic static illusion created by black and white figures. These images are called distorting and are created by incorrect comparison of size and distance of objects. For example, which one of these lines is longer? Now our brains will tell us that this line is longer because it's longer as a whole, where in fact both lines are equal in length. Now this is the most studied optical illusion and was created by a German psychiatrist, Franz Müller-Lehrer.
Which of the middle circles is bigger? Again, they are the same size. In this illusion, the contrast of the surrounding dots makes it difficult for us to see that the circles in the centre are identical. We are deceived because the mind uses an object surrounding to help estimate its size.
Now, which image here is bigger? The juxtaposed lines on each of the images would lead us to think that this one is bigger, when in fact, again, they are equal. Because the curved line of this image, in comparison with this curved line here, obviously leads us to believe that the bottom image is much larger than the top one.
Which line is longer? In this illusion, we try to convert a 2D image into a 3D one. We interpret the black lines as being drawn into perspective, sort of like railroad tracks going off into the distance. However, these lines must be parallel to do that. Our mind then adjusts the lengths of the horizontal lines, seeing the one at the top as longer because it overlaps the black lines. Optical illusions are very useful instruments for photographers, architects and filmmakers. They use a technique called forced perspective, which employs optical illusion to make an object appear farther, closer, smaller or larger than it actually is. It manipulates human visual perspective through the use of scaled objects and correlation between them and the vantage point of the spectator or the camera. For example, the scene in a film, action or adventure movie in which dinosaurs or other creatures are threatening the heroes, by placing a miniature model of a dinosaur close to the camera, the dinosaur may look monstrously tall to the viewer, even though it's just closer to the camera. Also, the set that is actually a miniature, photographed from the correct angle, looks incredibly real as the finished footage.
Now, a very similar effect can be seen in this photograph, where the creature appears to increase in size as it moves further into the picture. It is actually the same. This is due to perspective. Now, perspective is invoked in this image by the pattern and the lines on the wall, which tend to converge into a common point in the distance. It can also be explained by the optical illusion taking advantage of the 3D technique where all the lines meet at one point at the edge of the canvas, thus making the mind see the picture as a 3D model of reality rather than lines on a screen. Since the largest creature appears furthest away, our mind will see it and adjust the size to make it appear as larger.
As you see, we try to convert 2D objects into 3D ones. But sometimes our eyes trick us, like in this illusion which seems to move, but what really happens is if we look on one bit of illustration that's appropriately shaded, but then see it is disjointed with other hereby areas. We keep jumping around trying to map out a 3D solution, but sometimes this just doesn't work.
So the mind interprets the succession of static images as continuous motion, and very similar effect can be seen in these pictures. They are drawn on a flat background and attempt to trick the eye into perceiving a 3D scene. This is very effective since the eye must do something similar in its normal functioning because the retina is indeed two-dimensional. The same effect is used in these advertisements. We see them as 3D while in fact they are actually painted on a flat background.
Illusions show that visual perception is much more complicated than initially imagined in primitive views, but only with the visual experience can our visual system develop properly. People totally blind from birth who develop sight at a larger age can never make sense of the visual information and may be unable to see the world accurately.
So let's look at these pictures and pretend like we don't know anything about optical illusion.
quite surprising, isn't it?
Well, that's what the structure is, where nothing is as it seems. Thanks for watching and tune in next time.
See ya.
Bye.